Hi and welcome to Easy Fishing. Now, just recently I've shot a couple of videos about sea fishing, and there's obviously been a fair amount of interest in it. So what I'm going to do is run through the basic cheap equipment you need to get started. Now, you're not going to see me recommending you buy top of the range beach casters, etc., because this is aimed purely at beginners. Someone who maybe is on a very tight budget and just wants to do some sea fishing from the beach or the pier. So I've put together an assortment of bits and pieces that you need, and with a strict view to keeping costs down. So first of all, what do you need? A rod. Well, here we have a rod. Cost me, I think it was £19.50. It says it was rated to cast 4 to 8 ounces, but don't believe that. I would say 5 ounces is what it will do. It might be lobbed 6 ounces. It's very cheap. Like I say, it was less than £20, and I have tested it, and it is a nice rod, especially for beginners. It's easy to cast. Don't fall into the trap or believe so-called experts or dealers who try and flog you an expensive rod, for this is all you need to get you going. The only fault I found with this rod is that the tip section doesn't have any reflective tape on that, but I will put some on and do that, so it's easy to see at night. So that's the rod. It's light, 3-piece, so it fits in the back of your car easily. Now, if you have children or getting a child equipped youngster for fishing, sea fishing, what I would recommend is what is normally called an up-tied rod. It has a short butt and a longer tip. These will cast 5 ounces, and believe it or not, although they're only, I think this one's 9'6", it will cast, if you can do it, a good 130 yards, if not more. Up-tiders are basically were developed for when up-tide fishing became popular, and they're basically a cut down beach caster, and that's all they are. But being 9 foot long or thereabouts, they're easier for kids to handle. They are absolutely great on the pier, because most piers you do not need to cast a long distance. This one is a very old, it was my dad's old Ryobi, so it's at least, well, bought in the middle 80s, so that gives you an idea how old it is. Nice glazed tip for bite detection and seeing it at night. Lined rings, got quite a soft tip on it for good bite detection, but it does cast and fish very well. One of these, about £40 or thereabouts if you shop about. Have a look at Shakespeare's, do a nice one on the budget end of the market, and so do Daiwa in the D range. Again, this is aimed at people who don't have a lot of money. Next thing you need is a reel. Here we have good old cheap, it's called a Titan, and I think it's marketed by Grovel or Gravel, however you pronounce them. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce the name. And it's called a Rock F70, so it's a 7,000 size, got more than enough ample capacity. It's only a cheap reel, £27 or 27 or 27.50, I can't remember. Next thing you need is line. Now this one I've spooled up with some line that I had in my fishing box, but go and get yourself some £15 nylon. Don't worry about braid and that at the moment, this is purely aimed at beginners. So here's a good cheap one, a Rovex 10X. This one is, you get over 3,000 meters for 12 quid. But you can buy a smaller spool, but this will last for a long time because sea fishing is quite harsh on the lines. Excuse me while I have a mouthful of tea. You also need what is called a shock leader, which is basically a length of stronger line tied to the end of your main line to take the force of casting. There are certain circumstances where you don't need one, but I would generally recommend that you have one for safety's sake. This one here is £60 Varivas. It comes on a big spool. It's quite thick, and I've used this line on and off for a while, and it's very good. You can get a spool of this for about £6. You can get a smaller spool of mono, I don't know, 250 yards of cheap mono for, I don't know, £5 thereabouts. Just an ordinary regular monofilament. One thing you must do is you must fill the spool. Now you need to fill the spool up till it's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch, something like that, below the lip of the spool. You will generally find on the cheaper reels that they have, this one for instance states it's got a line capacity of 250 yards of 20 pounds, or in metric 300 meters of 0.40. So you're going to have to fill the spool up with something else. I used some old 50-pound line that I had lying around, filled the spool up, round some electrical tape, stretch tape around it, and then added a shot of line on. You could fill it up straight from a bulk spool, but that's just a waste of line. So this one, it's got about, I don't know, 200 odd yards on it, which is more than adequate, and a shock lead on top of it. This one is a bright green one. So next thing you need hooks, etc. Now for beginners, I would suggest by far the easiest way is to buy ready-made rigs. And this is what you want: a 2, 1, 2 or 3 hook, what they call a flapper paternoster. 2 hooks I think are fine. This one was £1.85. I would purchase about 3 or 4 of them if you can afford it, and later on I will show you how to tie your own. Next thing you need, how do you fasten these to your reel line? Well, I use a product made by Breakaway called a fast link clip. There you go, that's your fast link. Tie it to the end of your shock leader with a good 5-turn uni knot, grinner knot. I wouldn't recommend half blood. Tucked half blood may be, but a uni knot is easy to tie. With one of these tied to the end of your rig, it's a matter of seconds to change your hook. I'll just use a lead weight as a demonstration to show you how quick it is. There we are, done. Releasing it just as quick. There are other makes of lead clips, but I like these. Generally speaking, I like Breakaway tackle. The other people you'll see them from Tronics, Gemini and other people, but I like these fastenings. These were the first ones on the market. They've never let me down. All the others seem to be copies of them. You can now buy Chinese or whatever they are, cloned versions of these, but I prefer the genuine ones. 1, it's supporting British industry, and 2, I trust them. I've never had one let go. Next thing you need, lead weights. You need what is called a breakaway type lead. This here is a breakaway lead. It's 150 grams or 5¼ ounces, this one, and the wires come out from the end of the nose and swivel. The object being, you set them in the little grooves in here like this, cast it out, and they dig in the sand like an anchor. Now the old-fashioned ones were just fixed and they were hard to break out. This is called breakaway lead because when you pull it to retrieve, the wires spring out and it's easy to retrieve. Sizes for most general fishing, 150 grams is what you want. They go up to, I think, 210 grams, and there are various different versions, but the plain, straightforward breakaway is what I prefer. There are obviously other leads. Its main competitor is marketed by Gemini, and that has an interchangeable head on here, so you can, different types of grip wires. Bit more expensive, very good, but I like breakaways. It's worthwhile having a couple of plain leads, just big bombs, no wires. You want, lead wise, I would say you want 3 or 4 leads, and a couple of plain ones. I don't know, weight wise for the plain ones you can have a 5 and maybe a 3 for when you want the bait to roll around on the bottom. And that is basically it. There are a few other bits and pieces that are extremely, well, they are necessary. Right, so what do you need? First of all, I would recommend that every beginner has a baiting needle. They come in 2 types, straight wire with a little tiny hole at the end, or the Breakaways Easy Loader, and there are a couple of versions of that on the market. Basically, how they work is you push the pointed end down through your worm, slide it up the shank, put the tip of your hook in there, in the top there, hold the line tight and then just slide the worm up. But when we get on the beach, I will demonstrate that. Other bits. A disgorger. I like this one, it's a Gemini. Works really well. Just get the line in the hook and the hooks come out quite easily. Other essentials. You can get by without this, but I use it a lot. It's elasticated cotton or elastic thread. You use it to bind the baits to the hook. A sharp pair of cutters, which I prefer side cutters, or scissors, or a very sharp knife. Talking of knives, you do need a sharp knife. Now, there are lots of laws, rules and regulations in this country about carrying knives. I carry a couple. I like this one. It's a little, I don't know, it's about a 3.5-inch blade thereabouts. It's got a nice comfortable handle. It's got a serrated bit on the back for descaling your catch. Comes in a hard plastic guard. So keep that in your toolbox, in your tackle box I mean. Do not be tempted to walk around with it in your pocket. You are leaving yourself open to being accused of carrying an offensive weapon, because these are pointed and sharp. Now, if you've got a knife, another essential is some means of sharpening it. You can use a simple little sharpener like this, or a stone, or there are diamond hones, all sorts of things, but you need to have a very sharp knife for cutting bait. And on the subject of cutting bait, I use a very cheap, I think it's called a Tesco's value chopping board. It's about £1. When they get really scaggy, I bin them. But you need to cut your bait on them. If you cut your bait on the stones or whatever, you'll blunt the blade. If you cut them up on pier decking or whatever, you will not be popular, and it will blunt your blade. Going on from there, we have quite strict limits on the size of fish you can catch. So I carry a breakaway match length. It's basically got centimetre graduations. You don't need to have this. You can have just a length of wood, any old bit of wood. I think the minimum size limit for most fish is about 27. Set a bit of wood and 30 centimetres long. If it's 30 centimetres long, it's pretty edible. Bass, I'm not sure on the size limits. I tend to ignore size limits and go for a decent sized fish. So if I get a fish that's like 50 centimetres long, I'll think about eating it. And the thing with bass is you are only allowed to take one. And this size limit business is important because we do have fishery officers come and check to prevent people taking undersized fish. And for want of a bit of wood of the correct length, you can just put an indelible marker across there at 30 centimetres or whatever, and you're safe. Same as the chopping board, you can just take a bit of scrap plywood if you're really tight on funds. Couple of last things that I think are pretty essential. A finger guard. Now this is a chub one, it's made out of leather, goes on your finger, loops round your wrist for when you're casting, stops the line digging into your finger. Can't afford it? Get a length of old bicycle inner tube. Does exactly the same job, sits on your finger, protects your finger when you're casting. And that is virtually it. The only other thing is, if you are fishing at night on the beach, or if you're fishing on the beach, you'll probably need, in fact you'll definitely need, a rod rest. Now the sort of rod rest I have is an extremely ancient tripod. Clips up, has two tubular legs like this and a main angled piece of aluminium with a couple of cups at the top to hold your rod tips and a couple of cups at the bottom to stick your rod butts in. Price for one of them, you can get a cheap one for about 15 quid, or if you're really hard up, I would suggest you have a look at Graham Pullen's TA Fishing, and he shows you how to make one out of 3 bits of wood, and it doesn't come much cheaper than that. But yeah, a good aluminium tripod is great, but a wooden one will suffice. Fish don't look at it and go, whoa, I can't take that bait, he's fishing on a wooden tripod. Fish don't think like that. And last is a light. Now, unfortunately, a sad fact of life is, in a lot of British shore fishing, is much better at night, and for that you need a head torch. I've got a little one here. It's got an extremely bright bulb. I think I paid about £6 from Asda. It's getting a bit old now. It's got a push button on the top and 2 red LEDs, which I never bother using, but it's got pretty good headlight. Put that around your head. What I do is, if I'm wearing a cap, I click it under there, put my cap over the top of it, and it's there. I keep one in my car at all times. Have you ever tried changing the wheel in the dead of night with no lights? It's a nightmare. So yes, a small head torch, and that is it. Hook sizes on the rigs. You want a size 2 up to a maximum of 1/0. No bigger than 1/0. Smaller hooks catch small fish and big fish, whereas big hooks only catch big fish. And to be fair, the majority of fish you catch on the beach will be fairly small. So cost wise, I reckon probably about 70 quid to buy all this lot. So it's not expensive, and that's about as cheap as you can go. You can see beginners outfits on eBay and stuff, but they're generally not that great. There are exceptions, but mostly I wouldn't and I did have a good look around eBay before I chose this. I was a bit dubious about the rod. I thought 19 quid for a rod, that can't be very good, but I've turned out to be quite pleasantly surprised with it. It's nice and it's easy to cast for beginners. An up-tider, about 40 quid, uses all the rest of the end tackle, is great. So, you know, for a youngster or someone who's very small in stature, an up-tider is what you want. And that's it. So I'll be doing further videos of putting all the tackle together on the beach and showing you all the other bits and pieces, how to bait the hooks up, what bait to use. And that's it. So that's the first part of this series on beginners sea fishing. So thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you all again very soon. Tight lines.